Hello, it's Tracy Bray, the medium in Kansas City, Missouri. I'm sorry I'm a tad late tonight, and I'm looking around for glasses, which I don't see my reading glasses. Crud. Anyway, I'm a medium in Kansas City, Missouri, and earlier today I post nearly daily here on Facebook, Tracy Bray Medium. Tracy's with an I. Bray is B-R-A-Y. And in it I mentioned that I was going to go live at 5 o'clock. Sorry I'm a bit late. Facebook has changed the way one sets up a live, and I didn't know that. And so, a little flustered, but if that's the worst thing that happens to me today, I'm in darn good shape, right? Okay, so anyway, I asked y'all, what might you like to know, have me look at in regard to the coronavirus? And I'm doing that. I took questions up until about 4 o'clock this afternoon, and I've just been finished putting them together. And I have grouped them into 7 different areas. I need to take a drink, one moment. One thing I vowed that I would not do, probably a couple of weeks ago, which is similar to things that I do anyway, is not answer a question, will you contract the virus? You know, have you been exposed to the virus? Will you actually be affected by it? Will you become ill? I'm not answering any of those for anybody. That would be really inappropriate and unethical to do. And that's just like in regular readings. I'm both a psychic, where I'll look at information that are questions and concerns that people have that don't necessarily have to do with the dead. And then as a medium, I connect with the dead. I'm not going to do that today, either the psychic or the medium. I'm strictly talking about coronavirus and answering questions that you gave. I need to preface at the very beginning, I do not diagnose, treat, nor prescribe. I can tell you what I see. Also, I'm a Windbridge certified research medium. The Windbridge Research Center is located in Tucson, Arizona. I've been with them for a number of years and was also with their program prior to that, which was called Veritas out of the University of Arizona. And anything I say today is what I'm getting and does not represent Windbridge at all. So I want to make that clear too. As far as you putting in questions on the side, I may or may not see those, and my camera is set up over here, the screen's over there, so I'll be looking at some different things, and I see that a number of you are on here already. So again, today I'm not going to be looking at questions about the dead, nor this kind of is psychic questions, I guess, but they're psychic questions that many people have presented before. Because I don't always see things in real time on my computer screen, if you do interject things, I may or may not see them. So don't count on me seeing them there, and don't think that I'm ignoring you either. I'm a one-woman show, and this is what you get right here. I'm turning down the volume on my telephone. There we go. Okay, so wanted to mention a few other things. I read from Kansas City, Missouri, where I live. I'm not doing in-person readings at this time. Today I did the last one that I'm going to do for a while. And when I reschedule, open the schedule up again, who knows? I don't know for sure, and I would tell you that anything that I tell you today that comes through to me is dependent on my ability to discern what it is I'm being told or shown, and their ability to show me in a way that I clearly understand. So it's kind of a two-way street there. Also, your understanding and absorption of what is being said. I can't control that either, and I trust that the great majority of you are going to absorb this information as it's said, but I don't know. So it's just some different ways that messages can get clogged up in the transmission, the delivery and the transmission sometimes. On the 18th of March, I did a post on what had I seen about the coronavirus and what I'd not seen. And I encourage those of you that didn't read it, it was pretty widely read, to go back and read it. It was from the heart. It was pretty honest, like I am very honest, and I'm also somewhat forthwith, and I think you would find it to be that way. I'm not a medium or a psychic that puts a lot of gloss and shine on things. I don't do a lot of what I would call woo-woo or foo-foo talk, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not my style. So this is practical stuff that I'm seeing. Wanted to also mention that those of you that follow me regularly know that I've had a book put together for a couple of years now. I'm in the process of editing it. I had an editor that came out of the blue. It was magical. It was so exciting. He knew what he was doing. And I wanted to mention his name is Neil Valley. He, excuse me, in San Francisco. He pretty abruptly withdrew from the project. I suspected something was wrong, but as is my way, I don't look at that because it's really none of my business. That would be almost like being, oh, the word's escaping me. I'll come up with it. But anyway, I didn't look at that. I took his word for it that he couldn't do it any longer. And he passed away on St. Patrick's Day. So my heart goes out to he, his family, his generosity, his quest for learning, his love for what lies beyond. And I trust now that he's seeing what lies beyond and that he's excited and jazzed, and I'll see him again. I hope he's working on my behalf. I know he has lots of people he's met over his lifetime and things that he wants to accomplish. So we'll see what happens. But God bless Neil Valley. And that brings us to the coronavirus, which has nothing to do with Neil Valley, but because that is not what he passed from. But anyway, I took questions from several of you that wrote in this afternoon, late this morning and this afternoon, and I grouped them into 7 different areas. And this is the order I put them in. Time frame. A lot of you had time frame questions about quarantine, etc. Some of you, the second group is healthcare. Mainly, what did I see as far as healthcare down the road is. The third group is about supplies, from our personal supplies. A surprising one that nobody asked was about medical supplies, which I am going to cover that. Another area I grouped as quarantine characteristics. The fifth group would be, what about the stock market and our economy? Some people apologize for asking the question. Don't. If we don't have economy, we ain't got nothing, guys. That's one we're going to look at. And the 6th is why? Why did this happen? And the 7th is future of this pandemic and others. So with that, I have one thing I'd like to add, that if you are writing in, and I see that a number of you are, hello, hello, hello. If you come up with things, my gosh, if you come up with things that you already are learning from this, that is a big wake-up call to you. Maybe a little thing you've begun to appreciate more. Would you type them in, please? I hope that you will do that. Type them into the screen. I'm pointing all over here. But I think what you have to say is every bit as important as to what Spirit has to say. So type in good things that you've realized, things that you're looking forward to during this time of, I don't know what to call it yet, the wait and see time, and put some positive things in there. Need I say, I had some comments this afternoon that I nixed out of the feed. As I say very succinctly, my page, my rules. And actually it's Facebook and we're all their guests, but for now, my page. They're not doing this, I am. I did forget what I was saying on that. Oh, some negative comments, and fire away, people, if you want, but you're going to be nixed out of their band, etc. And this is about bringing people up, not slamming people down. I wish for all of you sincerely that might be watching, that are in that camp, find your path. It's obviously not here. Okay, so number one, the time frame, and I don't have my glasses on. Carol, Keith Fannin asked, did I have any forewarning of this? And I can't speak for any other psychics or mediums because I really haven't looked at anything they've had to say. I don't really follow anybody. And that's more from lack of time, not lack of interest in what anybody else is saying. But no, I did not. And you can read the post that I wrote on the 18th that speaks to that. But good question, and I'm not ashamed at all to say I did not see the magnitude of this coming. I do recall when I first heard about this virus back in January thinking, quote, oh man, this is going to be bad. But I didn't look at it any further. And the post on the 18th talks about why I didn't look any further. So there's a lot of other interesting stuff in that. It was really a widely read post, so I hope you'll take a look at it. Thanks, Carol, for that question. Susan Wilson Bennett and Wendy Olson asked about how long is this quarantine going to be. First, I've got to say, I know one of those two people is in a state that is under quarantine. They're under house containment, home containment, stay at home. I think at 5 o'clock when I started this in Illinois Central Time, if I recall correctly, that was when people were ordered to stay at home. And I don't want to use legal terms, ordered, required, etc. I don't know the details of those. But so some states, some areas are different. I noticed on my Facebook feed a moment ago that I'm in Kansas City, that an order is going into effect on Tuesday in the Kansas City area for Johnson Wyandotte, and Jackson County residents. And it's a stay-at-home order. I know no details, so that's just coming in. So the quarantine length, I think ultimately what everybody's getting at in that question is, how long are we going to be shut up? Shut up into our homes, not shut up. And I've been getting on that throughout the week, probably into mid-April. People have asked, and it's somewhere else in here, are we going to see kids going back to school? No, I don't see that happening at all this school year. I think eventually all schools will shut down. And many of them have. I don't know a percentage. I'm in a 3-state area. I'm in Kansas City, which is a little bit north in Missouri, and next to Kansas, and above us is Iowa and Nebraska, so you got a 4-state area right there. And I know Kansas has shut down all schools. I'm not sure what the others have done yet. And I know my state of Missouri is considered nationally to be pretty far behind the curve in making decisions, but sometimes not making a decision is a decision. And all states are different. That's part of the power of this country. Okay, so quarantine length, I talked about that. In a different way, Jennifer, and I just love these questions. They were excellent. Jennifer Hockaday asked, how many months to contain the spread of this virus? Now, I think that goes almost in tandem with the last question of mid-April. But I do see, like a forest fire will go along and it looks like got it out and poof, up it starts again. And sometimes you see that in a residential or a business fire. It looks like it's quelled and poof. I think there are going to be some of those poof pockets of this virus around the world that continue to pop. And when that happens, popping reminds me of acne, and this is like a bad case of acne, man. It's running all over. If you look at the earth as a face, And one of the areas where acne hits a lot, there are some pretty pockmarked places. And I think that's going to take a while to contain. But as far as we go in the United States, and keep in mind I'm sitting right in the middle of the United States, so I'm not looking at metropolitan areas per se, but that would be my sense, that probably by, I'm going to extend that, they say late April into mid-May is when I just am seeing people on TV saying it looks like this is getting contained. It looks like we've got a handle on this. And I could be wrong, but that's what I'm getting. Okay. Penny Sanchez asked about the lasting financial impact. She compared it to the financial impact, if you recall, back to Katrina, the hurricane, and how some businesses were wiped out, some physically were wiped out. I mean, off the face of the earth. Others were not able to, and some of those were not able to repair themselves financially. And we're going to see that happen. There's just no doubt about it. And so, yes, it is a lot like Katrina, I suppose. I don't know the stats of that again. But she wondered, when will people be going back to work? And I think that depends on the health of the business. I'm not talking about the health of the business owners and operators. I'm talking about, for the most part, the health of the business. Was it financially able to survive this close? And how faithful are its customers, the consumers of the product, whatever the business is? So, I would say those that have survived, that I think they're all this time planning on how can we do this can be a real opportunity. How can we do the business better? How can we be more effectual? What are people going to need when we come out of this? What do we keep that we've always done? Just lots of questions are existing, and I think it's that cream that floats to the top that'll keep going. And that may not be just because they have capital, money. It may be because they're creative and are able to work through this and truly serve their consumers. So I would say, again, that probably is going to be, they're showing me strongly the first week of May. Okay. Let me go on down this. Also, Deb Ellington Van Dusen asked about this too, so I wanted to credit her. So thank you, all of you, for asking these great questions. All right, let's move into number 2. And this is regarding the healthcare end of it. And I just wanted to look over at the screen here and see if there's anything life and death on it. And again, I won't see everything. Thanks for the compliments on how I looked. My hair is a frizz bag mess today, so I had to put it up. Let's see here. Okay, many of you are already writing in positive things you're doing, positive things that you've seen happen. Please keep doing that. Look at the comments people are writing in, and if you've got something you want to add, add it. Okay, so number 2, healthcare. Anne, and I don't know how to pronounce some of your last names. I hear them in my head all the time when I see them, but Anne Cronin Sukma, I think, asked about how long has this virus been around before we, and I'm going to say we in the United States, knew about it. That's covered in the March 18th post, so take a look at that again. But I was getting, at the time I wrote that, which was, what is today, the 21st, so that's just 3 days ago. My sense is at this point it's been about 5 weeks that there were people walking in the United States with the virus, maybe a little bit earlier than that, but I think earlier than what we were told. And I never got that when the virus started to emerge, particularly in the nursing home in Washington State, I never for a moment thought, piece of cake, will contain this, we'll get through it, like the Ebola crisis, which was one of the last pandemics. I don't know if that was called a pandemic or not, but one of the epidemic or pandemic, probably pan, that we were able to get that contained. When I saw nursing home, my thought honestly was that's all she wrote, as in this is like it's loose, it's uncontained, it can't be contained. And that sounds hopeless. I'm not hopeless about this at all. I should have stated that in the beginning. I intend for this to be a positive as much as possible presentation to you. Okay. Thanks, Anne, for the question. Seraphin Castells, I believe, wondered about universal health care. Will this be cause for this country to have something like universal health care? And she also asked, will there be a greater understanding as a result of this virus that we need health care for all? I'll put it in those words. One moment. And I will say absolutely yes. I want to write down something so I don't forget. Thank you. Yes, I think that I think what's going to happen, because actually, even though health care is inundated, overwhelmed, I think some good statistics are going to be kept. And I think that if there are people out there that contract the virus, they're going to a lot of them are going to be tested, and some of them are going to receive hospital care. Some of them will die, and some of them will be will not die in a healthcare facility. But all of those, be it through law enforcement, through investigation of an unattended death, that means somebody dies alone or somebody dies within a household or a motel, that there are other people around but nobody saw the death. Those things generally have to be reported and investigated. So there are going to be a lot of sources of data taken on the illness, mode of contact, if any, etc. So that means elected officials are going to have, as well as medical officials, the Centers for Disease Control, are going to have some great numbers to work off of. And they're telling me that it's generally factual information that cannot be denied. And that information base is going to serve as the basis for moving closer to healthcare for all. I don't know right now. I've heard some numbers in the media in the last week how many people are actually uninsured and underinsured, and it's hundreds of thousands in the United States. So that's what I have on that. So there you go. There's, in my opinion, a very positive thing that could come out of this. Nobody should not be served. And Stacy Macy asked, will there be any effective treatment for this? Yes. I think from a CDC, Centers for Disease Control, testing standpoint, I'm going to say 13 months from now. So what is this, March? So April of 2021. And I want to back up on that. That's a vaccine. 2021, a vaccine. Effectual treatment, though, I need to look at that in a different way. And I'm seeing the numbers 19, 1 and 9, 9, 1, September 1st. I'm going to say by September, there are going to be some organized treatments. And it feels like there are at least 3 different protocols. They may overlap each other, but they will be shown to have some effectual way to combat this. Okay, so healthcare, the second issue I'm talking about, leads us into what I titled supplies. One thing that I was shocked that nobody asked about, and I'm not being facetious at all, were about supplies that we're really running short of in the stores. I've heard people talk, personally, conversations I've had, food, including milk, bread products, personal protective items, such as masks, such as, and I think it's the H95 mask that is an actually fitted, much more heavier duty mask. And I'm talking right now about the domestic population, not about healthcare professionals. But toilet paper, nobody asked about those things today. Thank you for rising above the material, everybody. How refreshing was that? But about those things, putting aside the masks, putting aside sanitizer for just a minute, we're going to have enough. There's going to be enough. There may be some rationing that is being done already. I know at my local Costco had signs up of the last time I was in there, and this may not be effective currently. I'm not speaking for Costco, but 2 cases of water per customer per day. And I know that there are different places doing things like this. I've heard people talking about their meat counter was totally wiped out. It's stunning. I know the feel of this to me is stunning. When I was in Costco that day, every line was open in the checkout. I've never even seen that at Christmas time. And it was very busy, but it was very quiet. And people looked pensive. You could feel the tension in the air. Everybody was behaving beautifully. I look for that for the most part. Nobody asked that either to go on, where people do act and behave admirably. I don't get panic. I don't get uprising. I don't get civil war. None of that. I think we learn to behave in a cohesive manner where we help each other. Might there be isolated incidents? Absolutely. But does it become the rule? No. I don't get fear of collectively will we destroy ourselves. I don't think so. Okay, so back to the supplies. Jennifer asked about food supply in the Kansas City metro specifically. Again, I don't see that being an issue. One thing also that is probably, I think, could be, and no pun intended, the trump card of the whole thing is how we as a nation, and it's going to have to start coming from the government, excuse me, is how we supply the healthcare industry. I'm talking physicians, emergency rooms departments, hospitals that are treating people that succumb to this illness. I know a couple of people in my life that work for major hospitals in the United States that are used to using a mask per patient per day. Some of those, that's 45 to 75 patients a day, and now they're being told to use one mask. And part of that is because of the run of masks by the public. Another part is that for everybody's using more than they usually use because of the numbers of people coming in already. And many sources will say the United States has not hit their peak of the illness yet, may not for 2 to 3 weeks. If we don't get on this now, I think that this could be disastrous, in more of a disaster than it already is. As in, we have to have our healthcare professionals healthy, mentally and physically. Can you imagine the stress? Some of you are healthcare professionals. I've read for 3 doctors this week, several nurses this week. And it's a bad feeling, guys. So I think if I were to say to you, I didn't have this on the list, if there was anything you could do about this, I am one proponent of calling your legislator If you can use Facebook, you can also get on and search for, Google a search for my member of Congress, and put your city and state, my member of the Senate, your city and state, and call their offices, email their offices. You can find contact information online and say, I am so concerned about this. You gotta run like hell, guys, women, to get this job done. Okay, moving forward here. I'm moving into the quarantine characteristics. And they're in no particular order. Wilson Barrett, asked about, will people go back to school this year? I guess I already covered that. I'm not saying it, no. I think within the next week, they'll be virtually, other than online schools, schools will not be meeting. I would imagine homeschooling could be banned from the gatherings of no more than such and such number of people. But what people do on their own, I can't control that, but I can say no public school, no universities, no colleges, no parochial schools for the most part. I think they'll go along with this too. I think that's done for this year. And to all of you that are stay-at-home, or that are parents that are having to stay at home, having to find childcare, I think all of our hearts go out to all of you. And how do you educate your kids about this? I mean, there's tons of stuff online right now. If you're online, you're finding those lists. Please state a reputable stuff. If you're in question, ask somebody else, probably is a good thing. Okay, the spread in Kansas City Metro. Jennifer Hockaday wants to know, what's the spread going to be like in the Kansas City Metro? And I think it's going to be, if you compare it per capita, I think it'll be high. I think if you compare it per overall in the United States, I think it will be lower. And I think the lower is we're not as crushed together in the Kansas City Metro. I mean, I can, right now, I could throw a rock and hit the building next door and break a window with no problem if I lived on that side of the building. But I couldn't throw a rock and hit across the street or to the other three sides. So, there's space, there's breathing space. Many of you are watching from your own private single-family dwelling. We have breathing space. We tend to be practical. We tend to listen. We're used to natural disasters in the Midwest. Tornadoes are a good example of that. We hear warnings. I don't know if you would agree, but I've talked to many people when we have been out driving. Traffic is much less. I couldn't believe yesterday I had to make a run out for something at 5 o'clock on a Friday night. Usually I would have planned 4 times what it took me to do what I needed to do. There wasn't much traffic on the road. So things we can feel are changing. So the spread, I don't think will be as widespread, but will there be deaths here? There already are. And is it going to spread? Absolutely. And are we going to know people that have gotten sick? Absolutely. Or know of them. Long-term effects regarding education. What's going to happen to our kids? Wendy Olson asked that, as did Deb Ellington Van Dusen. And also asked about long-term employment effect. I'm going to talk about education quick. I think most education systems in this country are really quite adaptable. And I know that our educators, for the most part, are really enthusiastic. They're in the business for the right reasons of helping children grow and academically prosper, and also socially. They're going to fix this. They're going to make up for lost time. I think they're going to be the haves and the have-nots, kids that have families that foster them along in their learning, that help them. And there are going to be kids that just, like before they get to kindergarten, they don't read, they don't count, because they haven't had anybody working with them. So they're going to be, there's going to be a widespread range I'm getting, but overall, I think education will recover. I've heard, of student athletes, my God, that are missing their tournaments, of kids that probably some of that performance depended on their scholarships, just wide ranging effects of this educationally, sports, academics, and that is going to be, you can't recover that time. It's gone. But finding new ways to measure it will happen. Will there be unfairness? Yes. Will there be perceived unfairness? Yes. But we deal with those things in this country day in, day out. We're going to get through it. And I think we're going to be better for it. And I think we're going to have plans for this if something similar happens again. Many cities in our country have had natural disasters. Nashville, a couple of weeks ago. They've been dealing with these questions for more weeks than that virus has been kicking up, sort of. Katrina was mentioned before. So there are some areas in the country that are more on top of this than others. Okay. So we talked about the long-term educational effect somewhat, the long-term employment effect. I don't think what Spirit is telling me is that I could focus on the woes of, we know the restaurant and entertainment industry is really hurting. I can tell you in my own business, I had been doing really well this year. And this sucker hit, and appointment scheduling has pretty much dropped off to very little to nothing. I'm into my savings. Won't be there for much longer at all. And so I'm worried. I feel the pain of this. It's frightening. But deep down, I know that we are a country where we're always provided for. I'm not talking about public assistance. Sometimes that's from the guy next door. Sometimes that's from the gal in the grocery line. My utmost belief is that human kindness is overwhelming, and that is what will sustain us. And actually, I would put that way beyond the edges of the United States. That's what keeps this human race going. Human kindness is overwhelming. So I could focus on short-term of service industry, restaurant industry, etc. I don't want to do that in this question. I want to focus on something positive. One thing this is doing, and not hearing a lot of talk about it yet, but it's causing us all to reevaluate what's really important. What do I want to have happen in my life? If I had 5 more years to live, or 5 days for that matter, what do I want to accomplish? What do I want to leave as a legacy? How do I want my children to survive, etc.? So we're being posed with an opportunity for in-your-face questions. And I think we're going to, because of that, I think in the fields of healthcare, public safety, and education, I think we're going to see a lot of retirements, a lot more than were anticipated. And did I say public service? I hope so. I think people are going to retire. Some people are going to think, I can't take this crap anymore. This is too stressful. I need to get out. I want to spend my life in a certain way. But for positive reasons, for the most part, I think there's going to be a heavier exiting of professions, which for those of you, which are many of you that call me, where we talk about, I love those readings. We talk about career and direction of life and what's important. And I think that the employment sector is going to open up a lot of opportunity. Will there be sadness with that? Yes. But there's going to be opportunity as well. And if you're one of those that's thinking, I'm out of here, I'm done, I'm not going to do this anymore, more power to you. Live your life in a way that's important. And what's important is going to become pretty black and white here within the next 2 weeks, I think. Okay. One moment. And this is the longest section, by the way, the quarantine characteristics. And I hope to be done with this by 6 o'clock. So just a little bit more to go. World agreement. I love this question. Serafina, you really came up with, all of you came up with the coolest questions, but I just love this projecting out into the world, not just looking at our little own world. But you asked about, would there be a world agreement on pandemics that would come forth, maybe about prevention, maybe about coordination? And I get yes. I think, and I had so wanted to keep politics out of this. We have a president right now that withdrew us from the Paris Accord. We are not working on environmental issues, of which this one is sort of kind of environmental, but not. We're not playing in the world arena as Americans, our government, as we were. And I'm assuming that is done. That's behind us. We, as a people, will not be able to survive. This is going to kill a lot of people. We're not going to survive this overall unless, and help our brothers and sisters in the world survive, if we don't stand up and insist on world agreements and plans on pandemics. Prevention, coordination. Excellent question. And I see that we do that. And then Courtney asked, will this impact politicians? Yes. And you know, one of the ways that I think, it's just fact, that we are impacted when it's our brother or sister, when that perishes, when it's one of our parents, an elderly parent, when it is our neighbor. But we're seeing already that many politicians are self-quarantined, and I think I've seen a couple that do have an active illness with this. So this is going to hit those populations. And I don't know what the average age is in the Senate and in the House and of the cabinet. But I bet it's up there. I bet it's above 40, maybe above 50. And, you know, you're hitting 50 and 60. They're saying elderly, of course, are more susceptible, of which I am one of those. But also, excuse me, I'm seeing some things come out now that are saying a higher percentage of people under 60 are contracting the illness itself. So you just, you know, facts and figures are changing all the time, morphing and developing. Okay, so will it affect politicians? Yes. Will it, another question by Courtney was, will it therefore change the trajectory of decision making? Yeah, I think, that again, with politicians, presumably they represent the populace, and what's important to the populace who reelects them is going to be what's important to them. But at the same time, as mentioned, I see things being important to them because they're people too. They're not immune from any of this, so they will suffer and rejoice as do the rest of us. So therefore, change will be a result of it. Another positive. Will we survive? Deb asked, will we survive in all areas? And I'm forgetting, maybe I can go back, Deb, I can't, and look at what you meant. Will we survive? You know what? Overall, we're going to survive this. Overall, we're going to be a stronger and better people for it. We're going to be all right. Does everybody survive? No. But overall, we're going to be all right. Okay, the sixth area was why? Why did this thing happen? Courtney Barnes asked, is God trying to shock our world into making better decisions, into taking care of our planet, into taking care of each other? Over the years, you know, if you would have asked me this question 30 years ago, I would have said yes. That's not what I've gotten over time, though. Over time, what I've gotten is that God, the creator, the powerful, you know, whatever you call your higher power, is a loving higher power, is a loving God, is not a punishing God. I think we could stand back and say, does this feel punishing? I think to many of us it does. So no, I don't think so. However, we were presumably given the opportunity of discernment, the ability to make decisions, to assess information and material, and boy, are we being pushed as a people to do that right now. Thanks for that great question. Nina or Nina, I love that word and that name either way. Madden asked, is there a correlation between revelations in the Bible and what's happening today? I don't know specifically revelations, other than that I know that it speaks to the ending of time, the end of the earth. And I am not feeling anything that this is a sign of the end. I do believe personally that there's a beginning to all things, and there, as far as being a living piece of matter, a living human being, life ends and it changes or sustains and shifts into other things. So do I look at this as an ending of the earth, an ending of man as a race? No, I don't. Great question. Stacy Macy asked, I thought this was interesting. I had not heard this or read it. She wanted to know if this virus started in a bat, the mammal, a bat. And I point up because I was bitten by a bat 2 rooms that way a couple of years ago. Went through the rabies series. Spent a lot of money out of pocket doing that. It was tough. But anyway, did this begin with a bat as an intermediate host in a pangolin? I think that's how you pronounce it. And someone was kind enough, if you flip back up into the earlier post today, they posted a picture of what that mammal is. I had never heard of it before, and that sadly it is one of the most highly sought after black market animals due to the scales it has, being made of keratin, which is fingernails. So anyway, you can read about that later. But did it start in a bat with intermediate host in a pangolin and then to humans? I get partly yes, is what they're saying. But then they also show me that if I was looking at a bat, and bats do have fur, fine hair, and if I was looking down into the bat, and I might find fleas or insects or I don't know what. I'm not a scientist, but I see stuff moving around. And, there's that on our human skin as well. So that's not foreign to bats. I don't look at bats as bad to me, even though I've been bitten by one. They're such a cool mammal. Such survivors. But anyway, what they're showing me are all of these other organisms that exist on our skin. Sorry for the sirens behind there. And when you use the word host, that they all play a part in this ecological system, and that it's almost like you hear the expression, it takes more than one to create a fight. I've always hated that. But it's almost like that's what they're saying in regard to the development of this virus, that many things played into screwing this whole product together, where it came out in humans as, oh, here we have the coronavirus 19. I think part of the problem with the virus is I'm getting that it is morphing. When I look at viruses, bacteria, fungus, all as critters, creation that does one thing: survives to thrive. Thrives to survive. It does both things. But in its quest for survival, it does what it has to do it. And right now that little bastard is running across the continent attacking. And it's attacking secretions in lungs, and that's what's pretty much killing people that die from it. And it's learned this is how it lives. This is how it survives. You know, is it a thinking being? I can't speak to that. But therefore, how it started, I'm getting that it was morphing and evolving right before it even attacked man. I can only tell you what I get on that, but that's my non-scientific thing on that. So, and I'll talk about stopping it and stuff in just a moment here. We're almost done. I can't see what I wrote. This is getting harder to see. And then Stacy also asked a great question. Would eliminating wild animal markets, this is, by the way, lepidolite, Lepidolite. It's one of several stones I have here, but it's a great healing stone. And interesting, I didn't know what I was picking up there out of the choices, but that's what I have. Isn't it pretty? It's kind of, you can see it shining there, mica-ish. And there's the other side of it. And this looks, different pieces look different ways. Some are darker, some are more lighter purple. But anyway, you asked, would eliminating the wild markets where they're selling wild animals for food consumption prevent other deadly viruses? Evidently, Bill Gates has mentioned this. I looked at that when I read the question, actually, and I wrote down no. Part of it is the black market for this stuff will continue regardless if the wider sell markets are open. So no, it will not stop it. And again, that's where I go back to the thrive and survive issue with this. This is a pretty potent, and I think the word is virulent virus, and it's not about to be stopped right now. So that leads to number 7, our final category, with just a few questions in it, I think. I'm sorry, I skipped number 5, which is the market, just a couple of things in there. Will recovery, this is Lisa Luttrell, thanks Lisa, will recover the market be quick? And somebody asked me this earlier in the week, and I still stand with what I was shown then, that by the end of this calendar year, by the end of 2020, the market, well, I don't think it'll be back to the high of where it was, but it'll have regained a lot of what was lost. It will be looking actually pretty good, is what I'm getting. This is a temporary fall. So if you can, I can't give market advice. So you can make your own assumption there. And then Wendy Olson and Teresa Patty Major asked about the economy, the economic impact. I think we've talked about that some. There are going to be major losses, closings, and then there are going to be gains. I heard Amazon was adding, I don't know, like thousands of people to the workforce, actually to help accommodate, like they do at holiday time, the number of orders. But I hear, you know, there's the old biblical saying, the Lord taketh and the Lord, what is it? The Lord something and the Lord giveth away. But anyway, it's a give and take, that some things will go up, some things will go down. People will be cared for. Does that mean there aren't horror stories? No. But it means overall people survive. Also on the economic impact, I wanted to mention quickly that earlier this year and into late last year, our government was talking about hitting China hard with trade agreements, making them pay up. And I don't know the politics of that. I don't know. Econ was the only class ever I got an F in. I hated it. I just did not like it. Sorry, economist. I didn't get it. It wasn't relevant to me. But I find the parallel interesting that we held China, they were pointing this out to me, we held China accountable, you know, tightened up their nose down to the grindstone. And there was all kinds of uproar of how were people going to suffer and what would happen to the economy. And a lot of people in the United States in business have been suffering because of that. And now look what's happened. So when I look back to the why did all of this happen, that's another way Spirit was showing me that this is not just an isolated event that happened. There's cause and effect to everything. And I get that there is some sort of tie-in of how we and world markets have behaved and now what's happening. You know, is it a what goes around comes around thing? I don't know if that's exactly how they show it. They show it as a give and take, a cause and effect. Okay, so now we're back to the last section, pandemic future. Deb Jernigan, who, by the way, in today's post before, for the one that said that I would be doing this live, I used a photograph she had taken out in Blue Springs, Missouri, which is east of Kansas City Metro, of the angel in the cloud. So I love that picture. Thanks. I think I've used it before. But anyway, she wrote that Sylvia Browne, many of you knew her as the psychic, not Teresa Caputo with the long nails, but Sylvia was older and she kind of drone on and talk with her fingernails. Well, anyway, Sylvia started her career in Kansas City, Missouri. I never knew her, didn't really follow her, but it's been reported that in one of her books, she predicted this virus happening in 2020. She said, evidently, I've heard this from different people, it would be quick in and quick out. In other words, it would start quickly and quickly. I think quick, and should Sylvia have known? God, no. I think that she hit this pretty well, is pretty remarkable. That's what we do. But quick in and quick out, quick is relative. Some things are pointing to that this was known to be on the move in December of 2019. And here we are 4 months later and thousands of people dying. So, you know, is this quick in and out? I don't think quite so. Also, the comment was made by Ms. Brown, who has passed, by the way, for those of you that don't know, that in about 10 years there'd be a repeat of the same virus. I would say no. I'm not seeing that same virus coming back, but I do see that she could be right as far as a pandemic goes. But I think history would tell you, if you follow epidemics and pandemics in the world, they happen a lot more regularly than we would realize. So I can't say one way or the other that she's off on that. I would say she's probably right. And that led to a question that people had, Serafina had about other pandemics. Yeah, there are going to be. And then we talked about a vaccine and when. Okay, let me see if there's anything else here. A few more. This is a good one to stop on. Vicki Burns asked about when will be the end of this virus. I'm going to say that as long as humans live, this virus will be present. If even at worst, this virus will be contained in a virus repository. I'm not going to talk about specifics on that, but folks, those are sitting a lot closer than you may think. Those are scientific lockers where all kinds of viruses and bacteria are kept, samples of them, for study. I would hope for good reasons. I think we hear of foreign powers sometimes may attack us with a toxic agent, which they do, they have, they're probably still doing. I do not get that this is one of those. And again, read the March 18th post, which will tell you more thoughts on that. But, technically, will it always be around? Yeah. But will it be out in the population? I'm getting that within 5 years, you won't see those pop-ups of this again. So with that, please remember that I am available for readings. It's how I survive. My website is my name, TracyWithAnI.com. I post nearly daily on Facebook under Tracy Bray Medium. If you haven't liked my page, which some of you haven't, please do. That's very helpful in allowing this to be circulated to more people. I also do channeled messages on the Facebook page. I have an email list that I just send out a newsletter to. A lot of those people are not on Facebook, but if you'd like to receive both, go to my website, tracy@tracybray.com. There's a tab for email list or email sign up or something like that. Please get on that. I don't send emails out that often. I try to do a newsletter once a month. I have things that are specials off and on, and that leads me to, you'll notice in this, which is getting a little lengthy here, in this presentation today, in this live session, I haven't offered a special. And I thought about it, and then I think that's really tacky, because it would seem as if I were taking advantage of all of you. It feels kind of crappy, on the other hand, to have things available at their full price right now. Having said that, perhaps there will be a special offered here soon. And finally, another thing that I want to mention that I haven't talked about at all, this will be quick. On my website, there's a page that is services. One moment. And on that page, there are new services available. I think there's one more kind of email reading, because I read by phone, by email, and in person. In person are suspended for a bit of time with the virus. But I also added in some feng shui services. And, some people are probably thinking, oh my God. But actually, feng shui is an ancient Chinese school, theory of life, etc. And I am not, although I'm trained in traditional Chinese as feng shui as well as intuitive feng shui, very different things, and I tend to subscribe to the intuitive school. Gee, what a surprise. Traditional feng shui is mathematical, it's scientific, it's predictive on those things, almost in a way like astrology goes, and there is astrology feng shui. There's a lot to say that if you subscribe to that kind of thinking, you can see exactly how the COVID-19 has evolved and how it has happened. If you look back in posts, I posted an article about that by a colleague and teacher of mine named Catherine Katie Weber. So look back through the posts over the last few weeks. There's been some channeled messages that talked about this as well. So on that, thank you so much for listening. I will try to go back and read through your comments. I see, I'm not real time, but I see already it's approaching 100 comments. So I hope that you've enjoyed this. Do not be afraid. This will pass. It will take people with it. I mean, how many times, if we equated this, for those of us in the Midwest and the South who get tornadoes, if we compared this to a level 5, I'm not saying on the Fujiyama scale, 5 being the most deadly, destructive of tornadoes, and a 0 being the opposite. I think we can look at COVID-19 as 5. And 5s, I think it's pretty fair to say, if you look at all living matter as living matter, animals, insects, birds, reptiles, fish, and humans, do any class 5 tornadoes not kill? No, they do. And that's where we're at with this. But overall, we will survive. We will be well. I'm here. Please take advantage of my services. I need you to survive. So thanks so much. Let me get over here to end the live video. And I hate this because this is the picture that always stays with this, and I look like a dork. So thanks so much.